Well, thank you very much to BSI for this great invitation to be here and speak with you all about what we're trying to do. A really carbohydrate-based sustainable aviation fuel and chemicals, really trying to get to a future that looks like net zero, but even beyond that. How do we get to net negative? Because we need it. We are a publicly traded company, so I'll skip that. But if you haven't heard of Gevo before, we're traded on the NASDAQ. We were founded in 2005. We have about 100 employees, so we're still fairly small, but we have big dreams, right? And what you'll see here is that we're really all about how do we make drop-in replacements, starting with carbohydrates, right? Working with farmers, working with those farmers, working with energy partners to provide renewable energy. So we not only can use renewable feedstocks that have low carbon intensity, but we can also use the right combination of energy to be very efficient with renewable energy to convert all the way to make things that are net zero and net negative for the future. You'll see here just a few pictures that I'll call your attention to. I'm from the Denver, Colorado area. That's where our R&D facilities are located. So I have to say thank you, Pune, for great weather, because when I left, it was minus 20 C. So my family is very jealous, I can tell you that. And I may stay an extra couple days. I don't really want to go back tonight. So you'll see also some of the other facilities that we operate. We have what we call our demo facility. It's actually about a 75 million liter ethanol plant, but we also make about, we have the capacity to make about 4 million liters of isobutanol at that facility, both running in a side-by-side combination. And then typically what we've done in the past, we've actually, a lot of firsts, right? Well, Gevo has a lot of firsts too. We were actually able to convert wood wastes into isobutanol then into SAF, and we did that at our fuel plant in Silsbee, Texas. It's a small plant with about 400,000 liter capacity, so we're excited to move beyond that capacity where we've been operating for many years into a net zero 1 plant, which is slated for South Dakota, a very small town called Lake Preston there. But it will be our first large-scale sustainable aviation fuel plant using carbohydrates, also making a lot of feed and food products at the same time. And then we're very excited. We talked about it. We heard about it, the role for renewable natural gas. We're big believers, right? We're big believers in renewable natural gas. This is our dairy manure biogas plant, about 400,000 million BTUs capacity, operational today. We just got done with our expansion, but we're partnered with dairies to basically pipe those together to one upgrading station. We put that in pipeline-ready gas, but we didn't get into it for that. We got into it to make basically zero or carbon negative renewable biogas so we could repower our production facilities and get to very low carbon intensity for the thermal needs for those plants. And then the last thing that we have here is just a picture of our office we opened in Albuquerque, New Mexico for Verity Carbon Solutions. It's not just that we need to make sure that we can produce these products, but for our customers, for exactly the reasons for that we talked about earlier, heard about around how does government have the right measures and sustainability topics. We need to track all the carbon, right? We need to count the carbon effectively. We need to make sure that we can be efficient with that. So we have a new carbon tracking business called Verity Carbon Solutions. It's all digital, a digital MRV solution that we've been able to introduce. So that's just like Gevo as a quick snapshot. But what we really do, I'll call your attention to the left-hand side of this slide here. We're focused on working with farmers first, right? But we're putting the whole business system together, from the farm all the way to the fuel that goes on the wing of the aircraft, or the chemical product that ends up in durable goods in your home today. So we really need to make sure that we start with the farms, that we can make sure that every chance we get, we're always pulling out the protein and the nutrition, putting that in the food supply, but then also using the rest to go forward with sustainable fuels. We're really focused on using carbohydrates. We use alcohols as intermediates, both ethanol and isobutanol, and then we go through chemical conversions, things that look more like what a traditional petroleum refinery or petrochemical company would look like. So we always are combining the best biotechnology with the best in catalysis to put together to make the fuels and chemicals. Again, drop-in fuels and chemicals. No need for us to redo what we need to do in an engine. We can drop in the SAF, we can drop in those fuels. we can drop in the chemicals. So think about things like ethylene, propylene, butenes, all those useful chemicals that we're making. So that turns into our four basic businesses that we have. Our Zero Fuels, which is focused on delivering SAF, renewable diesel, and naphtha. Our Zero Chem, which is both isobutanol and ethanol into chemicals like isobutylene that was mentioned earlier, and ethylene, propylene, other butenes. So we're very excited about this. I'll talk about it a little bit more. Then we have the Verity Carbon Solutions, like I mentioned, and our RNG business, which is active, that we just got done expanding, and it is a revenue-generating business for Gevo, being still early stage. That's really important that we now have a very stable revenue-generating business, and we're very proud of that. So why are we here? Why is this so important? Why is it so important to talk about what we're doing? I just wanted to bring this up. I found this really interesting when I was doing some research earlier for another talk too, that how much of the world's energy is actually renewable or zero carbon energy. And from the mid-1960s till basically today, we've got to about 20%, right? It's gone through ups and downs. There were some, delays in some nuclear energy, but other things like hydroelectric started to take over. Wind and solar have been on the rise now to take up where we stalled for a little bit. And I felt pretty good about this. I said 20% renewable energy. That's an accomplishment. Unfortunately, when you still look at what happened over that same time period, the world's appetite for energy in general went up fivefold, right? So we still saw this, we still see, and it's hard to see here on this slide, but we still see an increase in the overall output of CO2 equivalents across the board. So we need to get to that inflection point where we can go backwards. That's why it's so important for us to say we want to get to net zero solutions and actually net negative solutions so we can start to move backwards on this. It's also, I was here in Goa for the Clean Energy Ministerial back last year, which was a great event. But one of the other things that is really important to us is what we can't measure, we can't improve. That was the theme of a seminar that we had at that event. Really great, because we do need to be able to track this. We need to be able to prove it. We can't take that for granted, and make sure that everything that we're doing is really making an impact on this big need that we have here for this need. So when we think about what do we need to do, the good news is that we're fairly well, we have a lot of this in hand. You heard this from the earlier talks, that we have a way to get to economical drop-in replacements, things that we can use today in the infrastructure that we have. We have options, and we're implementing them for defossilized or zero carbon electricity. We need the accurate carbon accounting, which we're making progress on. We still need to harmonize. We still need policies that come together to make sure that this happens. We need scalable technologies, so it's great that we have partners like Praj who can do this and scale technologies, but we still need financing. So that's the stage that we're in today with our plant, and you'll hear a little bit more about this. So, this has been one of the areas that continues to, these things aren't free, these are big capital investments, and so definitely need to continue to get investment to make good on the carbon goals that we've set for the world, basically to make these challenges, good on these challenges. So on solutions, right, when you think about what Gevo is doing, this is probably really simple, right? But we like the simple, and what we've been doing for so long is not only using carbon as our source, but we've been using process energy that's also fossil-based, right? So both of those things have to be resolved. We have to use renewable feedstocks that can be low carbon, and we need to use low carbon energy to power those facilities in order to make this happen. And if we do this the right way, we're not only, potentially being able to get that down to net zero, but through the right sustainable practices in agriculture, we can actually take more carbon out of the cycle by avoiding carbon emissions, but then going beyond that and actually building carbon in the soil, right? Using soil, think about that as a way that we can sequester more carbon. And then, of course, we need to use that renewable power to power that, and use, a number of different things, carbon capture and sequestration. Ethanol is perfect at this, has a naturally concentrated stream of CO2, so that's a big part of our plan in the US. But then when we finally make that fuel, After it's burned, we think that we can get to a lower output of CO2. We can actually take more CO2 out of the environment than we put back in. This is our version of the circular economy at Gevo. It's really about this whole business system, and this is what you see us investing in. So starting with farmers, working with farmers, rewarding them, paying them a premium to provide low carbon intensity crops, which can also be done with sugarcane. We use carbohydrates broadly, as we'll talk about a little bit more, but we take those feedstocks in. We also separate out the food and the fuel components. We repower the plants with things like wind and biogas, but it circles back around, right? Because a lot of the co-products that we make actually go to dairies today. The same dairies basically that we're working with to take that dairy manure biogas and capture that gas and upgrade it to pipeline quality. And so you can see that it's all these different circles together that help us go from where we're at today with fossil GHG emissions, not only to zero, but where we think we'd be using the right combination of soil carbon sequestration and CO2 sequestration from the actual fuel production process, that we can get to that net negative solution. So when we put it all together, right, this is why it's really important for us to think about how do we measure everything holistically. So we start, in the US, we always wonder, how come this hasn't happened yet with the ethanol industry? So we use ethanol to jet technology today, but we need to track it all. But if you think about just using an ethanol plant that basically makes ethanol with grid electricity and regular natural gas, you would come up with something that looks a little bit lower. So this is the carbon intensity score measured by Argonne GREET. So you can see that about a 70. If you then use an alcohol to jet technology and power that with that grid electricity and natural gas from the grid, you still have to condense. What we have to do is take ethanol and up its energy density, because we need energy dense liquids for the wing of an aircraft. So that costs energy to run that process. If we did nothing to decarbonize the overall system, we would end up with a renewable solution that may have a carbon intensity that's not as good as the fossil-based alternative. So in order to do this, this is what we put together. This is the system that we're deploying today for Net Zero 1, where we use defossilized electricity. A lot of benefit comes from the integration of ethanol and ethanol to jet to drop that overall carbon intensity and be very efficient with the energy that we use. We also use renewable hydrogen, just a small amount of renewable hydrogen. We use CCS, so you can see all of these things are moving us back to negative, but the biggest lever that we think, and are the ag practices and the potential soil carbon sequestration. We have it listed here as a potential -30 on the CI score. We think it can be much, much larger than that. So this is going to be really important for us as we go forward. But again, this is how when we talk about it, this is how we get to a negative potential fuel, even after it's burned. What's important? Well, it's really important that we use non-fossil-based carbon feedstocks, and we think this is the solution. Carbohydrates are really what we're doing, but you've seen a lot of companies announce power-to-liquids technology, basically capturing CO2 from the air, using enormous amounts of power, then to convert that CO2 all the way back into hydrocarbons, right? Taking something very stable and putting all that energy back into it. Well, we think the best thing to do is to use photosynthesis. Photosynthesis and these carbohydrate products, it's the best direct air capture CO2 project out there, right? It's fantastic. So we want to use the sun. We want to use what is out there to actually capture most of that energy, so we can only add what we need to make our fuels. Just really quickly, when we compare this, if you just think about a pure power to liquids play, going from CO2, adding all of that hydrogen to get to the structure here drawn as just a C12 jet fraction, you're going to basically put in more energy per gallon than you get out. So that doesn't seem like the most sustainable solution. But if you put everything together, and I don't care if it's an alcohol to jet route or a HEFA or a vegetable oil based route, you're still getting the benefits of photosynthesis. So think about that, and this is really in a general case, but you get a net gain of 90,000 BTUs per gallon instead of a net loss, right? So again, it just shows the power of harnessing photosynthesis, the importance that we work with agriculture and use agricultural-based feedstocks. So then can we compete on cost, right? So when we think about a cash cost basis, and this just shows you that here's the price of jet fuel. This is a very US-centric slide, and West Texas Intermediate shows you where the blue dots are all where petroleum-based products have been. But we think that alcohol to jet and HEFA really can be competitive in these cases. Direct air capture, however, when you look at that and all that energy that we just talked about, that's going to be a much more expensive and less efficient type fuel to produce. So good news is agriculture has a big role to play in how do we repower, how do we have SAF as a lead. So we think that the sustainable aviation fuel in general represents about 3% of all global emissions. Gevo has about 3 billion per year which is 400 million gallons a year of signed take-or-pay offtakes. So the demand is there. We need to get going, right? We need this investment. We need to make sure that we can be building these plants. It's great that we have amazing partners like Praj and Axens to get these things done. So our plant that we're working on today, we've brought together the integrated process technology where we can cut out about 70% of the overall thermal needs from the design process. And we're working closely with Praj and Axens to get this done, to deliver this, and then of course counting all the carbon. This is what it looks like today. If I showed you a picture, it would look like a big empty space, but we've broken ground on it, but we haven't accomplished everything we've wanted to on the show you a real picture yet, right? So that's slated for 2026 when we can have this. Again, we take in renewable carbohydrates and make all these products. We actually make more feed and food products out of this in a sustainable fashion than we do fuel on a dry matter basis. So we're really proud of that. All powered by hydrogen, renewable wind, and zero carbon energy and RNG to make this a reality. Then we have to track it. Again, we have to track it, but we also have to reward those who contribute to lowering the overall carbon intensity. So we pay farmers a premium. We work directly with farmers, and we will be putting this all together. We started this program about 3 years ago, but we track back to their farms, and so every bushel that will be coming into our plant, we anticipate, we track, we score, and we reward them on a performance basis for the carbon intensity that they're able to deliver. We've got a project pipeline, but we're really working on getting the first one going. And just in efforts of time here, because I'm running a little long, the good news is, and what's really exciting to us is alcohol to jet. When you look at this, we expect it to be the major pathway for sustainable aviation fuel. And if you just look at the chart, what you can see is the combination of crop-based fuels of ethanol to jet and cellulosic is really where we think that most of that growth is going to be, both from corn and cellulosic and obviously sugarcane. HEFA definitely has a place to go, but you can see how it somewhat levels off, and that's because the waste-based HEFA feedstocks are fairly spoken for, right? They're all used up today between renewable diesel and the SAF projects that have been announced. So not much room for growth, especially from the waste-based, but huge opportunity for carbohydrates with alcohol to jet pathway going forward. And what I'll end with really quickly is just, it's not all about sustainable aviation fuel and drop-in hydrocarbon fuels. We're really excited about our potential to make net negative carbon materials, right? The durable goods. Think about the circular economy. Now we can think about how can we take ethanol, and with our proprietary production, we call it ETO, ethanol to olefins. We can make a suite of ethylene, propylene, butenes, and pentenes in basically one step. We're starting to pilot it, but we did partner with LG Chem on the chemical side of the business. This is great feedstock, not only for fuel, but for chemicals, to make these durable goods and then use all the different opportunities like I just talked about to actually hit very carbon negative materials when you use renewable energy, when you use carbon sequestration, when you use sustainable ag to make this a reality. So I will cut a little short with that and end. But thank you very much for the invitation to be here.